Well, hey, friends, welcome to the Everyday Mulemanship Podcast. I'm Ty Evans, and today we got a cool guest, Chris Eyer from up in the North Countries up in Montana. He's a mule packer. In fact, he's got a really cool Instagram page you got to check out called Mule Dragger. Amazing videography and photography on there. And I'm excited to talk to him about all things packing and mulemanship and horsemanship and just about a whole bunch of cool stuff in life. The guy's extremely talented and I'm excited to bring him to my listeners. So hope you guys enjoy this. At the end of the show, if you would be so kind as to leave a review, let us know how you like the show. If you could be as kind enough to leave us 5 stars, that would be really great. And tell me what you think. So, also a big thanks to our sponsors that make this episode free for you to listen to. We got Roman Home Tents. If you're looking for a good tent, a little mix between a cowboy teepee and a wall tent, you got to go with Roman Home. We'll go to romanhome.com. I love my drifter tent. That's one I use the most. It's a dang good tent. Also, Colt Saddlery, if you're looking for a good quality built saddle. Colt Saddlery, they've been supporting this podcast for years. And, Colt, he does a great job building saddles. Also, big thanks to Boyd Ranch Mule Days, one of my favorite mule events. I can't wait to go there. It's coming right up. It's going to be amazing down there in Wickenburg, Arizona, at the Boyd Ranch. Tons of games, fun, trail riding, concerts. I mean, we have a great time. I'm doing a clinic there and looking forward to it. Also, big thanks to Western Mule Magazine as well as Mules and More Magazine. They've stood by me for years and they've supported this podcast for a long time, and I'm grateful for them. And also Diamond W Enterprises. If you're looking for a good jack for your mares, look up Diamond W Enterprises on social media. Kevin right over there. They'll get you taken care of. And with that, let's get to Chris Eyer. All right, Mr. Chris. Appreciate you
All
coming
right.
on, man.
You bet. My pleasure.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about you. Um, Alyssa Yonker, she's the one that recommended me
Huh.
get you on the show. She's a fan of your Instagram page, and
Oh, okay.
and I'm not
Nice.
sure if you guys have met or not, but
I don't think so, but it's hard. Yeah, I met so many people over the. I'm sure,
oh
like you do so many clinics. I do like a couple pack clinics a year, and I
yeah,
feel like I meet so many people I can't keep them straight.
yeah, good, yeah. But
Mhm.
she said, hey, you got to get this guy on.
Oh, right on.
Um,
Nice.
'Cause I had her on a couple weeks ago, and
Oh,
I'll
cool.
ask you the same thing at the end. I always ask my guests if they recommend anybody, or whatever. She's like, "Oh, you got to
Yeah,
talk to
yeah.
this guy." So, and
Nice, nice.
I followed your social media for a long time. Man,
Oh, nice.
love your videos. You're
Cool.
so good at getting those awesome clips of the pack string and
Yeah.
man, so
Nice. Nice.
I live vicariously through you.
Nice.
When I'm on the road and I can't I get to pack in the summer. Like seriously, if I get to do 5 pack trips in the
Yeah.
summer, that's really good.
That's good.
That's really
Nice.
good. And so then I go back on the road and I'll be
Yeah.
somewhere in like, I'll be in Ohio or something and I'll
Right.
see post something. I'm like, oh man.
I know, especially during the season when it's rolling too. Yeah, it's hard. Like, yeah, for sure. It's hard if you're not able to get out on the trail. It's seeing it out there. You're like, oh, definitely leaves you wanting.
Yeah, I get to ride pretty much every day that I want,
Which is awesome. Yeah, that's amazing.
but it's not the same, man.
Yeah,
As
it's
just
not,
getting
it's
out.
not. It's
Yeah.
true. It's
Yeah,
not, yeah.
I see you. So it looks like you do a ton of stuff in the Bob, is that right?
Yeah, nowadays, like that's all I packed for a number of years between the Bob Marshall Wilderness and in the Bitterroot Selway Wilderness, just because I had one fire lookout contract in the Bitterroot that I did for like 8 years, and I would have to go resupply this lookout every 2 weeks. So I did a lot of packing over there for that 8 years. But no, for I don't know, for the last whatever 6 or 7 years, I pretty much all my attention has been focused here in the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex. Yeah. So that's like pretty much though, that's pretty much the only place I pack now for sure. And I live, just a couple miles from the trailhead. It's just right up the road here. So, the access to it is super simple too. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're right there.
yeah.
I've only ever been there one time. So that's why I'm qualified now to call it the Bob.
Not right on.
Right? Because I had
Yeah.
multiple people said it, you can't call it the Bob until you've been there. Until you've been there, you have to call it the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex. Like, yes, got it. Okay. So
Yeah, that's funny.
we went to we rode out a benchmark.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah,
I don't remember all the names
sure.
things, but we rode out of there, spent a week
Yeah,
and had a great time. Did a little fishing.
nice.
Fishing
Cool.
was kind of medium there
Yeah.
and I got a friend Jeff Pace. He lives in Augusta and
Oh
he's
yeah.
like,
Yeah, I know who he is.
you
Yeah,
know, Jeff,
that's great.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
He's
him
like,
well. I just our paths have crossed a few different times, but yeah, that's cool.
yeah, and he's like, no, you weren't fishing in the right spot, bud. You were you were way out. Like, all right, dang it. Well, I guess I better go back. So
What and where did you guys go? Did you guys go up to the Chinese wall or
we didn't go to the wall. We never did ride at the
okay.
wall. I
Okay.
really wanted to, but I guess I was so occupied with the fishing, trying to find fish. Well,
Oh, okay.
I'd ride a little bit, and then we'd look, see a good spot along the river and go, okay, well, let's
Right.
try it. And we'd tie
Yeah.
up and I'd fish for a couple
Yeah.
hours. And so,
That was probably
we-
along the west fork of the Sun River, I'm guessing, which is
yeah,
decent fishing. It's not great, but like, the best is really the South Fork of the Flathead River. That's the gold standard out here. Like, and you can legally, for a certain time in the summer, you can legally fish for bull trout, which is like one of the only places I think it's the only place in the lower 48 where you can, actually actively fish for them. There are an endangered species, but that fishery is so healthy that you can actually target them for catch and release for like 6 weeks or something in the summer. But that's such epic fishing in there, and the cutthroats are just unreal. So yeah, it's good fishing there.
well, I better go.
Yeah, you got to
The
go, man.
fish are calling. The fish are calling. I must go.
That's right.
That's like fly fishing is, I'm really not that good at it, but I love
Sure.
it. Like it's just,
Yeah.
I like things that make you really focus
Right.
on,
Yeah.
and it kind of lets you forget about other things in life. So like when I'm
Right.
fly fishing
Yeah.
and trying to hunt that fish, it makes me really focus. And
Right.
I found that, for me, I find that when I'm riding my mules, working on specific things.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of other things you can do that just kind of let your mind drift off, and which is
Yeah.
not a bad thing. But like when I'm fly fishing, I mean, you just have to. And I'm really bad at walking in the rivers, wading. I'm so bad at it. I have fallen down. I have fallen down so many times.
That's funny.
I just
That's
like
funny.
I can ride anything with hair,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but you put me in that water and I'm like slipping
Yeah.
around,
Yeah.
and so I just
That's
have to
funny.
focus on it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really like that. But
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I've been fly fishing for a bunch of years, and I would not consider myself great at it, but I have, a raft and a drift boat, and I fish a lot in the wilderness, and yeah, I still don't think of myself as being very good, but I sure love it. And like you're saying, that being able to get absorbed into that sort of like singularity of mind is, yeah, there's something really rewarding about that for sure.
oh yeah, hey, that picture you got behind you of all the meals, that is cool.
Yeah, it's a cool picture. That was like my first, what we, up here in this area, what we'd call a full string, which is 9 mules plus a horse that you're pulling them with. And that was like my first, like, that was a big goal of mine years and years ago. And yeah, that was the first like real full string that I ever ran. And that just kind of has to do, it's like an old Forest Service regulation where one person that's a packer, the maximum amount of stock they're allowed to run is 9 mules in a string plus a horse. And after that, it's like, they really don't like to run them longer than that. But, I certainly have, and a lot of private guys do. But yeah, that was just a goal I had for a bunch of years, just to get to that spot. And that was it. And I don't know, one of those mules is retired. That lead horse is dead, and one of the other mules is dead. But the rest of them were pretty young when that picture was taken. So those guys are they're still rolling. Most of those guys don't have a lot of time left in them. Like before they're retired, some of them had 3, 4 years of retirement left in before those. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 years of retire, and then a bunch. I have a whole. There's going to be a bunch of them that are going to go get retired here. So yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So,
yeah,
Chris, for my listeners, and for me, because I
yeah.
followed you, but I really don't know a lot about you, and I'd like to
Sure.
get to know you.
Yeah.
Hopefully, one of these days our paths can cross. I can get up there and ride with
Yeah.
you.
That'd be
But
awesome.
will you just kind of? introduce yourself to my listeners and talk
Sure.
about what you do and where you're coming
Yeah.
from and all those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So I live out here now in Ovando, Montana, and I live just about 10 miles up the road from where my great grandfather came from Ireland. He homesteaded here in 1889. Um, and then so I have really deep big family roots here, big Catholic Irish family, and so I'm still in this upper Blackfoot Valley. I'm still probably related to a third of the people up here. Just a lot of Catholics having a lot of kids and a lot of cousins knowing everyone up here. So but yeah, I have not lived up here my whole life. I wasn't born here. I actually am from Los Angeles originally. My grandfather left Montana during World War II because there was no copper up here. He was an electrician. So I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I did it after high school, did a tour of duty in the Marine Corps, and then came up to finish going to college, finish my undergrad degree up at the University of Montana in Missoula. But my personal history with the wilderness predates that by quite a bit. When I was 13, 14, 15, I spent a lot of time doing trail work and going through a mountaineering school when I was 15, and absolutely fell in love with the wilderness in general. And then I was doing a trip hiking across the Sierras, and that's when I encountered, my first pack string I'd ever seen. And it was up outside of a place called Horseshoe Meadows. And yeah, it was just I had a full moment there. And where this old timer just he cruised right past me, and I was hiking, and I just got off the trail and let him go by. And for me it was like this archetypal experience, because it was like I'd never really seen a pack string, but I knew exactly what it was. I somehow knew it was somehow like etched in the psyche of like the mind of the West or something, and I just totally recognized it. And I just like on the spot was just like had this overwhelming feeling like, one day I'm going to do what that guy's doing. And I don't know how that works. I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, I'd ridden horses before. I had family and friends who had horses growing up. So I oddly, even though I grew up, on the right next to the ocean, I grew up in an area where there was a lot of horses. So I'd ridden quite a bit growing up, but I had no, I'm talking like an hour long trail ride or something, like not that I had any idea what I was doing. But yeah, and then essentially, once I got up to Montana, which shoot was in 1994 now, I bought my first horse, and I had no business buying a horse and no idea what I was doing. But at the time, I had a girlfriend, and she knew a ton about horses, and she kind of just brought me along and taught me pretty much all the fundamentals of horseback riding. And she's an English rider. She still rides frequently now, and but yeah, so I learned a ton about, riding from her. And actually the first riding lessons I ever took were English riding lessons. I took like, I was learning from a dressage and jumping teacher, which was hilarious, but it gave me some great fundamentals. And I've always had a deep appreciation for the English world. And now my daughter, she rides English, she's an eventer. And but I've always appreciated their horsemanship. Not that it's the same by any stretch as what we do, but I've always admired their commitment to ongoing learning. Like, the people I know that ride English, they take lessons, and they've maybe been taking lessons for 30 years. The way they see, a lot of them see horsemanship is like learning never ends. Um, and I've always like formal learning in a training environment just sort of never ends. And I've always kind of appreciated that. And it's in fact, even just recently, I've been thinking, I really want to go back and I mean, I've ridden, legit tens of thousands of miles. But I think I'd like to go back and take some take some lessons just to kind of get back into that game a little bit. And I mean, I've started a ton of mules and horses, but I still feel like it's good to keep training myself. But yeah, then basically, I essentially at that point I got a horse and started going into the mountains, and it was just an absolute mess. I knew a ton about being in the backcountry, but didn't know anything about riding or horses or mules or anything. But yeah, I just sort of got into it more and more over time, over a number of years, and started buying more horses. And at first I was packing horses, and then I had a few like really good wrecks, like where thankfully nobody got seriously injured, but I almost killed a couple horses a few different times. And 100% of it was really on me. Like I had a couple horses that didn't belong in the wilderness because, packing and being in the mountains, it's just not for every equine. So I had a few animals that didn't belong back there. That coupled with my just profound lack of experience. And I mean, I was such a pilgrim. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, there was no clinics. There was no, there was no internet to learn from. I was just learning from a book. And yeah, basically I just thankfully survived that. But after a few good wrecks, then I started buying mules. I had one really bad trip here in the Bob, and I was like, yeah, that's it. I'm done. I'm I'm not packing horses anymore. And in fairness, like, I still occasionally will pack a horse, but mostly what I do now, with my horses, so they all know how to pack. Just like I want all my mules to ride and pack, and I want all my horses to ride and pack. And not that I pack them regularly, but every now and then you get yourself in a pickle and you need to throw a, pack saddle on a horse and go down the trail. But I also think it's a great training technique, at least as far as I'm concerned. That's how I start my stock out. Like, I have a bunch of up and comers right now, and it's, even as yearlings or less, when they're just weanlings, I'll get them out on the trail and I'll pony them up and down the trail, get them used to all the things. So yeah, and then I just sort of built up my string over the years from there. Um, and at first it was just like, had a mule, then I had a couple mules, and then eventually I started, got a few more and started picking up small contracts, like for outfitters or for the Forest Service or for some, nonprofit organizations, and I would pack for them. And then that just kind of grew over time. And at the time, at the same time, I'm like, I had gotten married, I started having kids, building up a whole separate business, um, as an electrical contractor, which is when I was in the Marine Corps. I was an electrician basically on airplanes. I was an avionics guy. So I had a bunch of background in electrical work. So I was building up my own business, doing residential, commercial, and industrial electrical work in Western Montana, and, employees and all the rest of it. And really in the beginning, it was like build that up, make good money so that I could be gone doing what I want in the summer. But then, I started to kind of shift that around. And I really wanted, my first goal was I wanted to be able to have, a string that was paying for itself. I wanted a bunch of blue collar mules that were, they didn't cost me anything directly, Um, because as you know, like what takes so long to build these strings up like this is really the infrastructure, and the money is just, it's just so significant. When you really look at, I roll up to a trailhead with 13 head in the back of the trailer, and you look at the truck, the trailer, the top, the tack, the stock, everything. It's like there's just so much money standing there, and it just doesn't, everything I have, I've earned myself, and I've never been given any help with any of it. So it just took me a long time to kind of build that up. And then now, I still have my electrical contracting company. And then a number of years ago, I did a saddle making apprenticeship. So I have a separate business making custom mountain saddles. And then, yeah, and then I have my pack string, that I do. And then, okay, do one or two clinics a year, something like that. But that's kind of like where I'm at now. And I've got a great ranch, and this particular one, I've only been on this ranch for, I think it's 5.5 years, something like that, that I've owned this place. So, but it's like ideal. It's a great place. And I built the whole place, so it's completely set up for my needs and what I'm about. It has a saddle shop and a good hay barn and good corrals and all the stuff. So yeah, now I'm pretty much contract packing, still for the Forest Service and for, I did a bunch for a nonprofit trail crew organization. I packed for them and was part of I was one of their master packers for, 9 years, teaching people how to pack, and, usually a couple apprentices every year. And then we started, I don't know, a couple of years ago, we started, or no, last year was the first year that organization had a journeyman packers program where we're really trying to give these skills back. So yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at now. Just living my life, building, like right now, I'm building in the middle of building 3 saddles, and, doing groundwork with some of these young mules that are up and coming right now that I have, which is kind of my next, I'm, trying to build this next generation out right now of both horses and mules, which is coming along really well. But as you know, it's the price of mules and everything. It's made it significantly more more expensive than it used to be. But
Oh
um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of an interesting time right now. And I think in packing, like as far as I can tell, just anecdotally, I don't think there's ever been a time in history where there's more people interested in learning how to pack mules. Like I just don't think, I mean, it's just people constantly connecting with me, getting at me on social media, finding my phone number online or whatever, and just trying to find a way in. And I think there's probably never been a time where it's harder to get into it. There's definitely work out there, but it's just so cost prohibitive. And now, especially in Montana, the big hurdle for people's land. Like if you're going to have 15, 20, 30 head of stock, like you're going to have a chunk of land. And now, in proximity to these wilderness areas, the land is just outrageously expensive. I mean, I honestly, like, I got in like at the perfect time at this ranch because I couldn't, like right now, if I came to buy this ranch, there's no way I could afford it. It's just the price is just like, tripled in the last like 5 years. It's crazy. So it's kind of an interesting time right now, in terms of what's going on. There's definitely work out there. There's projects that are not getting filled for the Forest Service as a contract packer, because there's just not the people to do it. But there's so many people that want to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. And yeah, that got me thinking about, so around here I do a lot of day work. So
Hmm.
just local ranchers, whatever, they
Yeah.
need help for the day. They need help with some brandings. They need help with gathering or just moving from pasture to pasture or whatever. And
Sure.
a lot
Yeah.
of Forest Service permits around here where I'm at. But it's the
Yeah.
same thing. So I do it. I actually don't do it for any money. I mean, I'm glad if they
Yeah.
buy me lunch, but because
Right.
if the
Right.
truth is, if they actually had to pay me, for what I'm doing, I mean, I
Yeah.
had to drive my pickup, I had to drive my trailer, had to, the saddle, the
Yeah.
mules, the horses,
Yeah.
the, I
Yeah.
mean, just the ropes. I mean, most of the
Yeah.
ropes these days cost more than what a day working wage is.
It's true. Sad but true. Yeah. It's
So,
sad but true. At
so it's
least
like
there's still, yeah, it's true.
so people ask me all the time, so well, how do you get into that? I'm like, man, I seriously, I do it because I love it. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
teaching clinics full time. I'm on the road about 40 weeks a year. So when I get to
Dang.
day work, it's because I just want to do it. I love it. I
Right.
enjoy it, and I get
Yeah.
to ride my own meals. I get to rope and do my thing. So I
Right.
don't do it
Right.
for
Yeah, that
money.
makes sense.
So
Right.
yeah, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's tough. And then thankfully there's still, the government contracts are tougher because they're completely linked to whatever's going on at the USDA, who oversees the
Yeah.
Forest Service and where the money's at and what money's available. The outfitting, contracting for outfitters is a little different just because that world has really blown up and like there's so much demand for those guys. And so there's a lot of outfitters that need help. But they're really looking for some sort of a push button situation. Like for example,
Yeah.
one of the trips I've done a ton of here is we pack people in with a raft and a raft frame and oars, and we pack them in 26 miles. We drop them off at the headwaters of the South Fork of the Flathead River, and drop them off, and then they put their boats together, and then they float out a little less than 50 miles all the way through the wilderness and do like these big epic trips. But like, that those trips have gotten so popular, that like like last summer, I didn't do a single drop float. Drop float's what we call those, where we're just taking them in, dropping them off, and they're floating out. But shoot, I mean, most years it's unreal how many of those things are going in. You're just pumping rafts back and forth, and then and it's expensive. It's I charge by the mule or by the pound, and I've kind of transitioned personally away from by the mule just because people just overload everything, and so I'm just like a by the pound guy. This is how much it is per pound. This is what it's going for, and like bring whatever you want, but know that you're paying this much a pound. And but those trips, there's still there's still good money in packing those. And I mean, yeah, there's some really, I mean, there's projects, without giving out all the details, there's projects that went out a year and a half ago. There's a project that went out, in Arizona, and it was, I don't know, the packing project was $200,000, and they couldn't fill it. They couldn't find someone to get it done. And it was a lot of packing. It was a lot of weight to move, but, there's definitely good money in it, but that project would completely unfilled. There's just no one who would pick it up. No one who wanted to go live at a trailhead for a year and a half or whatever,
Yeah. So like, are these type of contracts, are they through the USDA? Is that how?
A lot of them are through the Forest Service. Yeah, a
Forest
lot of those
Service?
are through or National Park Service, as
Mm.
well. Yeah. The NPS or USFS. Yeah. And, yeah. So and like we just got, we're kind of coming off, like the Forest Service is kind of coming off of a high right now because they got that Great American Outdoor Act money, which a lot of money went back into infrastructure of these wilderness areas and deferred maintenance and whatever, and all of that. Because these wilderness areas, I think, as most people know, like in these wilderness areas, you can't bring anything with a wheel or a motor or an engine. Everything that happens back there everything heavy has to get moved on hoof or on foot. And so, anytime there's construction projects that come up, like there's always a lot of weight that has to get moved. Occasional projects, they'll do a special use permit for a helicopter to bring certain things in. We had a bridge that had these huge glue lambs up here, and they allowed them to move those in with helicopters. But everything else comes in on a mule or a horse. So, anytime money goes into the infrastructure of these wilderness areas, even though the Forest Service has pack strings and pack mules, they don't have enough to really take on their typical trail maintenance plus these big construction projects. So that's when it all gets, sent out to contract or out to bid. So
Well, that's cool that like up in your country, especially, they're still doing a lot of this packing because I know here in Utah, there's a lot of Forest Service outfits they're moving away from that, and making it more
yeah,
difficult, even for just
I
regular
know.
stock users. They don't. There's some that don't want just stock users going in.
Yeah, it's true. And thankfully, I live in such a hotbed of like this would be one of the last areas where where they'd ever get rid of packing. But yeah, I talk to people who are packers all the time about it, and there's a few different moves afoot. There's a couple that have been ongoing in California to try and get stock use not allowed in certain wilderness areas, and I don't know. I always preach to people like, you know be kind to hikers. Just be nice, be friendly, be nice to people. It makes such a big difference. And unfortunately there's a lot of people that are horse people that they just don't, they approach hikers without they don't have the greatest attitude towards them. And even though we have the right of way because we have stock, like I always, anytime I can get off this trail and let hikers go by, I always do. I always try and like strike up a conversation with people and try and have some kind of connection with them because they're public land that belongs to all of us. And just because I have mules and horses because I work back there doesn't give me any more right to it. It doesn't make it any more mine. You could show up here from New York City, you've never been here before, and it's right up the road from me. That is your land just as much it is. And that's the beauty of, the American public land system, is that it belongs to all of us, and all these user groups. I don't think any one of them should have any real priority over the other. Our right of way stuff on the trail is just practical. But other than that, we're kind of all in this together, and we have the love of the wilderness that we have in common. And I do try and connect as much as I can with people and let them pet the mules and all
Yeah.
those things, and I think those little few minutes here and there on the trail make a big difference to people. And I think if you're not nice to people, or you're yelling at people or getting them off the trail, and I don't think that's not helping the world of packing at all.
No,
It's not.
I tell my students all the time, like, okay, you guys, you gotta just be nice to those hikers. I call them
Yeah.
these trail rider horse Karens. No offense to my friend's name Karen, but you know what I mean. Like they'll get so mad at hikers or something. I'm like, hold
Yeah.
on, hold on, hold on. And then
Yeah.
because of the right of way, like the official legal right of way, I think people let that
Right.
go to their heads. And I'm the same as you.
Um,
Well, and it's usually because I'm on a colt. I ride a lot of colts, so
yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would
Right.
rather choose my spot, get way off the
Yeah.
trail than a lot of the hikers. They'll get barely off, or right, they'll hide
Yeah.
behind a tree because they don't know or
Yeah.
whatever.
I
I
know.
just soon
Yep.
I'll get off the trail, to have the hikers come by, like you said, make a conversation with them because
Yeah.
there are a lot of people. I don't think I think there's a lot of people in our equine world that don't realize how many people don't want us out there. There's a lot
Yeah.
that
I
don't
totally
want us
agree with you.
there. You guys
I
gotta,
completely agree with you.
yeah.
And I'll overhear it every now and then, but it's like, man, we love it back here, but the trails are torn up and there's horse shit all over the place, or this section of trail is all mud because it's all been stock use back here, and all that. And I get all that, and I get that it can be frustrating, but I think like, just trying to bring it back to that common ground that we share, that love of wilderness. And, there's times where I've talked with people and just reminded them, like, hey, like these mules and horses are part of what keeps these trails open. We're hauling food and gear for all this trail crew people, so they can go back there and keep everything cleared, maintain the trail, put in the punch-ins, put in all the different infrastructure we need to keep these trails open and then keep this wilderness fully accessible. So yeah, they're a big part of it. But you know what? I'm always trying like, thread that needle, not trying to preach at them, but trying to remind them like,
Yeah.
we are in this together and these animals are part of that. But yeah, I'm with you. I feel the same way. And it doesn't matter if I run across another pack string because, as you know, like the right of way goes first to people with stock. And then secondarily, the longer the string you have the right of way. So often I'm running 9, 10, 11 head behind me, packing them. And oftentimes I'm alone. If I come across a string of mules, and it's some folks that are out for the weekend and maybe it's two horses and two mules and I'll always try and get off the trail for them. That's always my goal. If there's any way for me to control all those variables, I will. My stock have a ton of miles, they have a ton of experience. They're going to let me pull them straight up a mountainside and through a bunch of downfall and deadfall, and if I can do that to let those people by, it's a partially about just trying to be a nice fellow trail user, but part of it is I want to control those variables. I've had a number of wrecks because people have inexperienced stock out there. They see my herd coming up the trail and their animals lose it. And I've seen people get dumped. I've seen multiple pack wrecks because my string just shows up coming around the corner and startles, just sheer magnitude of it, that it startles their stock. And so anytime I can like get off the trail, give them lots of space, like I'm all about it. I basically never insist on having the right of way, if it's at all possible. If I get into a real pickle where there's no possible way we can pass or I can turn around, certainly if someone has two animals, I'd much rather have them turn around on the trail than me turning around 10 head by myself and like walking back to a spot where I can, we can pass. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you on that for sure.
I like I want to control my own variables too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, on the surface, it might seem like I'm being super courteous and really nice, but really,
Yeah.
I just want to control the spot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
I don't want
It's
to get in a
true.
bind,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, I've had the same thing happen where you have a string, and I have never pulled a string of 9 mules before. The
Yeah.
biggest string
Yeah.
I have ever pulled was 5, and
Nice.
that was a handful, But I've had in those
Yeah.
instances somebody else's animal, you know, take off
Sure.
and run through my stuff, and you're
Right.
like, oh my gosh, and
Yeah. It's a
it
mess.
can be a wreck, and that kind of goes
Yeah.
back to the like what I do. My career is all about mulemanship and in
Right.
training. And the best that part of controlling my own circumstances and my own situation is having control of my own animals and having a
Right.
good handle on them. And your animals, I mean, they get a lot of use, but you put a lot of work into them before you ever get out in those situations. So let's talk about some of the work you do, because you already
Yeah.
mentioned, starting them as even
Sure.
yearlings, taking them out, and then
Yep.
building from there. And um,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's and I've just developed my own program over the years, and one of the things when people are getting started in this world that I always encourage people to do is like, hey, go get a made mule. Go spend the money and get an animal that knows what they're doing. You don't want to be learning how to pack at the same time you're trying to teach an animal to pack. Like, and the best thing I ever did was I got tied in with this mule guy years ago who had a bunch of pack animals, and they were just, he would sell me what we call in my little world, we call them campaigners, where they're these guys, this is their career, this is their job, and they're goddamn good at it. And then you can go out there and you can focus on learning how to pack in that mule. If you pay attention, it's going to teach you all the things. It's going to let you know what you're doing right and wrong. And you don't want to be worrying about loads at the same time you're worried about an animal crossing a suspension bridge for the first time. So
Yeah.
for people starting out, I'm like, spend the money, get a really good broke mule, or borrow one, or go with someone who's got one and learn that way. And then you can start with younger or green stock. But for me, like right now, in October I came back from a mule sale, they were just selling weanlings, and it was in Pennsylvania. I bought 5 mules there, and so these mules were between 4 and 6 months old. So right away, these are all untouched mules. So my initial program is right away. I start just getting halters on them, just getting halters on and off, and leading them around, just in the corral around the ranch. Nothing fancy, just one at a time, putting on a halter, taking it off, putting on a halter, taking it off. Lots of time connecting with them. Lots of time in the corral, just petting them, doing nothing, sitting in their hay, just relaxing, doing nothing, just getting them used to being around them all the time. I do all my own farrier work and trimming, so I'm picking up all their feet immediately, just like halter them up, pick up their feet just for a second, pick it up, pick it up. Now, I'll do that throughout the winter. And then in like spring and summer next year, the next thing I'll do is I will take them one at a time and I'll take them and trailer them up to the trailhead, which again, for me, this is like 5 miles up the road. And that's like a major entry point into the whole wilderness complex. So I'll take them up there and just get them used to all the sights and sounds and smells and all the things happening there. And I'll go up there with just my mare, with one of my mares that's super experienced, and we'll just go down the trail. I'll just start them out, just cruising down the trail, and we won't go far. We'll go, 3 miles in, 3 miles out, just a quick 6 miles. And 3 miles up the trail, there's a big river crossing there, and there's a bridge there, which is great because I'll just go up there and we'll just work on getting across the bridge. And in the beginning, it can be a little nerve wracking for them. But I'll spend an hour up there, and if they're like a little sketchy, then what I'll do is I'll just bring a mule. I'll bring one of my campaigners, and I'll put them behind that animal, and then I'll have I'll just link them up. I'll throw a little saddle on that weanling mule that has nothing on it, and then just hook right to them. I'll hook one of my experienced mules, and having experienced mules to me is like for training pack animals. It's the best way to do it. And like I'll take them at home. Usually once they're ready to actually go to work, I'll just saddle them here, put loads on them here, on off, on off, on off, and then eventually I'll just stick them in the middle of the string. So that first year, this next year, I'll just bring them up to the bridge. I'll take them to a couple creek crossings, and we'll just spend time. Once they get across that bridge, I'll just go back and forth for, I don't know, hour, 45 minutes, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We'll just keep crossing that bridge. Then eventually I'll bring them over to some creek crossings in the spring that are a little bit swollen, but not bad, just like maybe 10 inches deep or something. And we'll cross creeks. Then there's another spot up the way here I have where I can get into a creek and just ride straight up the creek. So I just get them used to all that stuff. And that will pretty much be it for next year. They'll do that. And I'll just they won't even go on an overnight trip or anything like that. And then when they're 2-year-olds, then I start bringing them into the mountains with me and getting them used to my overall program. So they'll have a pack saddle on. They won't carry any weight at all, and I'll start packing them in the backcountry, and I'll just put them right in between two super experienced mules, and those mules will sort them right out. Like they're just amazing teachers. So I just put them in there, and we just go right down the trail. But for me, it's like, again, I want to get them used to what it's like to walk on these mountain trails, what it's like to cross fixed bridges, suspension bridges. What is it like? Some of them, it's like you got to like show them, like, hey, this is like the other mules are showing them. This is when it's time to drink. We're going to stop at this river crossing. They're watching all these other mules drink, then they're going to drink. We get to camp, and I free range all my mules. So I put a few bells on a few of them, and then I just kick them all loose. And like those young mules watching these, more experienced mules, like how they're interacting, eating all, where they're grazing, when they're going for water, and they're just following along with the whole program. And then, and I have like a little rhythm for my stock containment every morning. Get up, everyone gets a little bit of cake. So they all come into camp in the morning, they're all waiting for their cake. And you do that, on a number of trips, and like, shoot, they pick up the program so easily and so quickly. And then that third year is when I'll typically start putting weight on them. And right now, like, the mules that I've been running they're all going to be big mules. This 5 that I bought, 4 of them will all end up over 16 hands for sure. So those guys, it takes them longer to really mature. So that, like, oftentimes if they're not going to be that big, I'll start light packing them on their third year. But with these guys, it'll be, I'll light pack them a little bit in their third year, but I won't actually like start riding them or packing them with full weight until they're 4-year-olds. That's just kind of the way that, where I'm at with it. But yeah, that third year, I'll start, I'll put loads on them, and I'll just put panniers on them. I won't put any kind of like tricky loads on them at all. And I'll just get them used to having weight. And by weight, I'll usually put like 30, 40 pounds aside, something like that, nothing major. And once they start topping out that 4th year, then I'm like, all right, now it's like prime time, and they're going between 75 and 100 pounds per side, plus their 30-pound pack saddle or whatever. And it's usually that that third year is when I'd like to climb on them, at least get them in the round pen. I mean, I definitely do groundwork all along, but I'll get them in there and get a riding saddle on them, and then I'll start working with them and backing them. And my experience has been like if I end up with young mules, like starting them under saddle is kind of a no brainer. It's not like there's not like a lot of technique. There's not a lot of tricks to it at all. At that point, I have spent so much time with my animals. They know me. They know the program. They get the whole thing. And so getting on them is usually pretty simple. I mean, some of these mules out here that I've raised up, I backed them when they were 3, and by the end of the third year season, I'll just take off into the mountains with them, and I'll just ride them bitless, and we'll just go right down the trail like it's nothing. There's no big package to it. There's no big training program or arc to that for me. The mules just, yeah, they just seem to pick it up. But, I've always said, if I had any training secret to share with anyone, it's just spend time with your animals. That's one of the things that like people don't realize how much time when you're packing them and you're working them every single week, it's like hours. And I mean, you're living with them, you're sleeping with them, they're bedded down next to the tent, you're just with them 24/7. And I just think there's no substitute for just countless hours spent with your animals. It's like you just have a different relationship. And not that the groundwork isn't important. And I think a lot of the training that people are learning is fantastic. A lot of the natural horsemanship that's happening is so great. And there's so many good techniques out there and so many good trainers, like exactly what you're doing. And I think just one of the things that is just different about what I do is that's just I'm living with them. They know me. They see me every day. I put hands on almost every animal almost every day of my life. Like we have like this ongoing thing. It's not, I don't show up once a week and ride them for an hour. It's like, no, we're going somewhere. And they see me for sure as that herd leader. And they see me as for sure part of this whole situation, this whole program. They know where we're going and what we're doing. So I don't know. For me, that's kind of the overall program that I have. Not that it's the best. A little different with the horses, and that is, yeah, just because horses are a little different. So
Yeah, I always tell people, hey, if you can go out on a pack trip and take those animals and spend that time, you'll come back with a different relationship. Like I told you before,
so true.
I'm lucky, seriously, if I get 5 good pack trips in the
Yeah,
summer, I mean,
yeah,
I feel really good. But I love it, just like what you're saying, because
yeah,
the whole trip evolves around those animals, really. Like
yeah, absolutely.
in the morning you get up, check, they got to graze, you got to feed, you got to
Yeah,
water, then you're
yep,
riding all day, packing all day. At the end of the day, you're tending them again.
yep,
At night, you're thinking about them. Even in your sleep,
yeah,
you're like, all
yeah.
right, I
No,
hope
it's
life's
true.
good out there. I mean, it's just they consume it. And it's funny because I have been on some trips without the animals, like
Yeah,
we a couple years ago, my wife and we went to Hawaii.
mm,
No mules, no nothing. It was
yeah, yeah, yeah,
just a we called it just a city trip. I mean, we just did a city
yeah.
trip, right? I mean, I wore
Nice. Yeah.
shorts and I blinded the locals, right, with my like, they saw my white legs. But, you know, uh, it's weird to go on trips like that for me because my whole life evolves around these animals. My
Yeah.
my whole schedule
Right.
today my whole schedule today is evolves around the animals. Okay,
Right.
this morning out there doing chores, breaking ice, cutting water troughs, and feeding,
Hmm.
and I mean, and then as soon as we're off
Yeah.
here, gonna go saddle up and work a few, and I mean, it just
Hmm.
but really,
Yeah.
that those pack trips when you spend that much deep time,
Yeah.
just people, it's hard to sell that to people that haven't
I know.
experienced, because if they
It's
don't
true.
know it, if they've
Yeah.
never had a taste of it, they don't even know what we're talking about. They don't
Yeah.
know that,
Yeah.
I deal with so many people that they use these words like bonding or
Hmm.
connecting or
Hmm.
relationship, and I tell them, hey, you're not going to get that, what I'm trying to talk about, by just
Yeah.
seeing them 3 times a week at the local boarding barn. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you're
That's
not
yeah.
gonna have it. And
Yeah.
just you showing up and giving them a treat, that's not gonna do it. Like,
Yeah.
that's not the connection we're talking about.
Right.
That's not
Yeah.
that deep connection. And And I think part of the cool part of it too, Chris, is also doing these things in
Yeah.
the wilderness, in the
Yeah.
mountains. Like
Right.
you just can't you just can't replicate that. It's really hard to replicate that in the
Yeah.
backyard when, behind a busy road. It's hard to
Yeah,
get
it's
that
true.
same feel.
Yeah, it's really true. It's a different feel. And also, like in this area, because we have so many predators here, I mean, grizzly bears are thick. They come through the ranch. There's, three wolf packs that come together and go right here at the ranch. So, because of that, that gives a different vibe to it too. We're not at the top of the food chain. We're out there, and it's like you're out there in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, we're here, and they
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
safety is in numbers. Like they get it. Like when a bear comes through camp, they huddle up, man. They huddle up hard. And if when I'm out there and that's happening, they are huddling up with me and with their horse. Like they're like ready to fight. And I have certainly had mules that have gone after grizzly bears that have come into camp and tried to kill them. I have a couple mules that are just really aggressive with predators. But like that creates a different bond. It's a different situation. You're out there, there's animals out there that if they get a chance, or if one of those animals is injured, they are going to try and eat them, full stop. And you're out there in that situation and they know it, you know it, and you're like, yeah, like our safety comes because we're part of a herd. And like that's really it is different. Like I love, don't get me wrong, I love just going out with one mule or with one horse. Like I love it. It's so fun. And I do it regularly throughout the summer. I'll choose one mule, go out for a couple hour ride. I absolutely love it. It's a different kind of experience, a different bond. But when I go out there with 10, 12, 13, 14 head, like we are a herd. We're not like, and it's a different dynamic. And the way that we're all interacting with each other, the way that we're bonded together, it really is. It's just different. It's different because of the remote nature of it. It's different because they're relying on me to like get them to a place where there's going to be good grass to make sure that they get plenty of water to drink. And then also like we rely on each other for like just that general sense of defensive protection where we're out there and we know there's animals that want to kill us and eat us. And I love that feeling. I think it's great, but it does shift. It's a different qualitatively, it's a different bond. And just like I think that I've long said that like working stock are different. Like they're just different. And again, I don't mean it's like a superior connection. Doesn't have to be value laden, but it's a different connection. When you're working with animals, it's different than if you're just like going on a ride once a
Yeah.
week. It for
You called
pleasure.
them
Like
you,
that's
you called
great.
them you called them blue collar mules, and
Yeah,
I
blue
I
collar
love
mules. Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
it's the same thing. Uh I primarily come from the ranching world where
yeah.
you're working cattle, you're
Right.
doing a job. And it's the same thing that with the packing world when you're working for a living here.
Yeah,
It's a different dynamic when there is a legitimate job to do. Like it's a
it
different
is. Yeah,
feel, and because you got to get it done. It's not like
yeah.
playtime. You
Right,
got to do it. And I think
right,
working that way, it just people talk about they want these relationships and with their
right.
animals. I'm like, hey, go work, go do the real
Yeah,
thing, go do a
yeah.
real job. It's a different dynamic when because
Right,
like for me in the ranching world, right? Somebody will say, hey, my horse, my mule, they're scared of cows.
right.
All right, go get a job with them because
Yeah,
you have to go move those cows. You have to do it.
right,
You got to do
right.
it. It's your job.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
it's like
exactly.
your deal. Okay, well, my mule's scared of the pack saddle. Well, guess what, buddy? You got to
That's
go.
what we're doing.
You
Yeah,
have to go pack that stuff in today. It's your job.
yeah,
You got to show up and do it. And
yeah,
I think having that little bit of pressure is what a lot of people they probably need it more than they
yeah.
realize they need it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess maybe I hadn't quite thought of it in those terms, but yeah, you make a good point. Like, yeah, there is this thing where it's like, yeah, it's not like, oh, no big deal. We can kind of go today or not. It's like, no, we're on a schedule. There's people waiting for this gear that they need for this project or for this, whatever, whether it's a construction project or a trail crew project or whether it's, like whether it's people who are you're doing a camping trip. Like I do some drop camps too, where I'm moving their stuff and they're just hiking without backpacks or with light packs. And yeah, there is like people need what you've got, and
Yeah.
like, having a lot, like we got to get this done. Short of an injury, like we're moving. It does not matter if it's snowing. hailing, raining, thunder and lightning, if there's trees across the trail, it's like, no, we're going from here to there, and that's what we're doing today. And yeah, and it does create a different kind of, it is a different kind of connection, a different kind of bond. Just like people talk about with dogs, like if you have a good cattle dog and it's a working cattle dog, like that's different than like my golden retriever who, comes on the trail for sure, but like she doesn't have a job. She's just like, I love her to death, but she's
But
not like, she's not
yeah,
going out to move cattle. She doesn't
every
have a job. It's very different connection.
every year, I help a friend of mine on it's always New Year's Eve that
Mm,
he has to move cows about. It's about 14 miles, but
okay. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, you're gonna be cold. You're gonna be cold.
Yeah.
I mean, every year
Right.
it's
Right.
it's always the negatives, and I think actually
Yeah.
this year will be the first year that he doesn't have his cows over there, so we're probably not doing it this year,
All
actually.
right.
But it's one of those things where you got to move the cows, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's good for like just a human when you
Yeah.
have to do something that you really don't want to do, but you're gonna
Yeah.
do it. And I've seen you
Yeah.
post your pictures of, yeah, there's one you posted, I can't remember when, a long time ago. I
Mhm.
think like, all right, well, it's raining. It's been raining for days, and this is the part that
Yeah.
nobody,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody they love your pictures and your videos of the sunny days, the green grass,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
It's true.
that beautiful pack string of red
Yeah.
mules, but
Yeah.
the picture of the rain, slop, and mud, and then not to
Yeah.
mention, it's not just see like in your business, it's not just the riding in that crap. It's the
Yeah.
packing up, the slinging
Yeah.
loads. When you got to load your 9 pack
Yeah.
mules and it's pouring rain. Hey, that's misery right there, man.
It is. It's for sure rough. There's no
That's not the
question.
fun day,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
there's
It's
something
not.
good
It's
for you
not.
when you do it though.
Yeah.
Like I don't care who you are. Like after you do something that hard,
Yeah.
it's good for you. It's just it feels good when you're done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's something going on in our DNA where, a life where there's a certain amount of struggle.
Yeah.
And that struggle could be working out every day in the gym or whatever it is. But,
Yeah.
like just having that kind of struggle, yeah, I think that's how we've evolved. We've evolved to excel under those circumstances. That's really what we're built for. And like, I for sure, I have that same experience where there's just a lot of satisfaction. It's not always fun while you're doing it, but when you look back at it, it's not just a good story. It's like there's something, I don't know, maybe it's a stretch to use the word therapeutic, but there's something about it that
Oh, it
rings
is.
true, like in my DNA, or there's something about it that just fits for me. It's like, yeah, this is like, I know, and I've said this a lot about the wilderness in general. It's like, we definitely in our DNA and how we've evolved, we're more set up to be in the wilderness than we are here at home with our grid patterns and, having, heating and air conditioning and all that, and a great easy way to cook and a hot shower and all that. Like we did not really evolve for that. That is like the majority of human history was not in that environment. Like if you can actually trust yourself and let go in those wilderness settings, and you understand like just letting your body tell you what it needs, like we know how to do that better than we know how to do what most of us are doing right now. Just the basics back there. It's like number one is always taking care of my stock. Number two, it's like you got to stay warm, you got to stay hydrated, you got to eat. Having just those basic things, like it's really, we know how to do it. It's really simple, but it gets intimidating for a lot of people. But actually, if you just kind of let go, like your body's going to tell you what you need. Stay hydrated, keep your animals hydrated. Yeah, and I think there's something about that yeah, it's a return to a much simpler way of living for sure, and I'm convinced it's more accurate to who we really are as human beings. It's like it's more fitting, and I think I think almost all of us know how to do it inherently. Like, yeah, you might have to learn how to pack a mule, and you might have to learn where you're going to set up your camp and whatever. But there's sort of like I think the way people talk about it now, there's like an ancestral wisdom that we have, that if we can get away from all of our other, especially like a lot of the electronics and a lot of the sort of overlay of our society, if you can kind of get away from that, like it's going to be good for you, and I also know that just from having taken so many people, introduced so many people into the wilderness who didn't know what a wilderness was, didn't know it was a thing, didn't understand it, and you go back there with them and they come out and they are not the same people. Like something has shifted. And maybe that's for a short period of time. A lot of those come back and it's for sure shifted their life forever. um, but yeah, I feel like it's, most people are just reaching out and touching something that their body already knows, and knows how to do and is familiar with in some sort of way. And yeah, I think most people just really excel at it and come out a different person than they went in, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And for my part, I think the mules are, like, I've talked about this a lot as well. Like, I think the mules and horses are a kind of midwife for that. They're sort of delivering people back to a more primal experience of themselves. And I think the equines are like this amazing bridge that brings people there because people love them, people feel safe with them. My mules are all for my mules and my strength have to be really good with people. I can't, because they're around so many inexperienced people. They have to be cool with people. So my mules love people. They're really into people. They think they're great. They love getting scratches, all the rest of it. But something about having those mules with people, especially it's maybe their first time ever being in the wilderness. You're 35 miles deep in the wilderness, your days in there, and people get uncomfortable, they're nervous. You're seeing bear tracks and bear shit all over the place. And then you have these mules that are like staying around camp,
yeah,
and you can hear the bells, and these mules know how to do this too. They're like, they don't freak out. They're just like, yeah, this is just a Tuesday or whatever, and they're just living their life back there. And somehow that seems to really help people settle in and people feel safer. A lot of people go back, they're really nervous about bears. And they are like, hey, look at these huge animals. And you talk to them, it's like the bears are not going to come right in this herd. Like my mules are not going to let that happen. And that
yeah,
makes people feel safer. And then people like have that, they start to connect with these mules and with the horses and the horse they rode in on and all the rest of it. And it just makes them, I don't know, there's some kind of a midwife, there's some kind of a delivery mechanism that helps people reconnect with themselves in a much more sort of fundamental, primal, simple, basic way. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, and talk about what it does for you too. Like for me, I've spent a lot of time, well, I would say alone, but I'm not. I actually
Mhm.
haven't spent that
Yeah.
much time alone because I'm always with my mule. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
well, I have
Yeah.
ridden me and my mule, checking cows and just riding and
Yeah.
out on the trail a ton of time alone, and those are some of my favorite rides.
Yeah.
Just being alone,
Yeah.
because it's a whole different like dependency. I think
Yeah.
it's really easy when you're with other people to depend on other people, and then when you're by
Yeah.
yourself,
It's true.
it's just you. But
Yeah.
yeah, you spent a lot. You spent a lot of hours alone, man.
I definitely have. Yeah, I've definitely. I mean, yeah, and every year is a little different. Some years it's like the vast majority of the trips I've been solo the entire time, just my mules and I. It's kind of a funny thing. Like personally, the easiest trips for me to do by far are like my buddy Max Van Briesen, he packs in Glacier National Park in the summer, and then in the winter he's down in the Grand Canyon packing for them. He's a national park packer, and he's a great guy, but like tons of experience. He hasn't been doing it nearly as long as me, but he's been, the amount of days he's got on trail and the number of miles that kid's got is like unbelievable. And he's just got the right head for the game entirely. So the easiest trips are like when he and I go packing together.
Yeah,
Man, it is just so easy because it's like we don't even have to talk. We know what our next move is. We're totally dialed in. He's dialed in on all my stock. He knows all the little hitches and who goes where in the string and who's good having this load slung and who will take the weird load and who wants the regular load and all the rest of it. Like those are the easiest days for me, is
yeah,
like me and one super experienced solid packer. The second easiest though is usually me by myself.
yeah,
um, and because so many of my trips, not only am I leading a crew of mules and I'm the one who's responsible for all the loads and make sure all the saddles are set, but also I am responsible for people, and that's a responsibility I don't take lightly. Like one of my big jobs is like I got to get my animals and these people out of here safely. And oftentimes, you're with inexperienced people, and like that's just another level of responsibility that you have to take up with. And so those are like, where those trips are the ones where I'm like the most, I have to be like, I'm not the most at the top of my game. I have to be paying attention to everything going on with the riding stock and with the pack stock and with making sure everyone's comfortable. And then if we see another pack string or we see a bear, and making sure everyone is listening up to me and paying attention to what I'm asking. But yeah, the time zone, it's just me, are those are the longest days because if I get a 4:30, 5 o'clock start, if everything goes super smooth, I'll be on the trail at 9 o'clock. I'm rolling down the trail, just in terms of, and that's if I'm at the trailhead or if I'm here at the ranch and and everyone's already wrangled and I'm just loading them in the trailer, going 5 miles up the road, pulling everyone out, building, all my loads are already built, but putting all the saddles on, getting everyone ready to go, slinging all the loads by myself, and then heading down the trail. If I can get on the trail by 9:30, I'm doing pretty darn good. Then I'm riding all day and then I get somewhere and then it's the same thing, jerk all the loads, jerk all the saddles, turn out the stock, get them all set, make sure everyone's been watered again. Those days are longer days, but yeah, there's something really, really satisfying and fulfilling about those days too. Like they mean a lot to me, having those days and having that time and not relying on anyone. It's just like my herd and I. And those days are interestingly, they're always like the most quiet, right? Because it's like I'm not really talking to anyone, but they have more communication than any other day. It's when I don't have to be tuned in to other people at all, is when I can be paying attention to the stock. And it's like one long conversation with 9, 10 mules and horse and me. And there's just so much information that is being transmitted when I am not distracted by all these other factors going on, that I can really pay attention and listen to them. And it's one of the more fascinating parts to me about packing, even to this day, is how it is. You're going down the trail, loads are set, you've already made all your initial adjustments, everyone's going. Right now, we're just pounding miles. That's what it is. We're just rolling. And you can, they get in the rhythm, you get in the rhythm, and then you can hear that one mule sigh just blow out, and then you watch that just go right down the string, and you can just hear everyone's letting go. They're just like, everything just kind of settles. The loads settle, animals settle, and like, man, this is it. This is where we're at. We are in our rhythm. We are rolling. And like, you're just going down the trail, and it's like, you just feel the whole thing just feels unstoppable. It's like everyone's in their place. Nobody's fucking around in the string. No one's like, off eating or whatever. We're just rolling. And clipping those miles under your belt is something super special and super unique. And it's, because as well as I do, I don't have any control over what's really going on. I have one lead rope. Those
Yeah.
guys in the back, man, they do whatever they want, but we've got
Yep.
enough of a relationship and we've had enough, time together and everybody knows their job, that like we are just settled in. And that's when you can, you're making good miles, you're making good time, and yeah, you just feels like you're on top of the world. It's like there's no place I'd rather be. There's nothing I'd rather do in the world than having those experiences. They're just so peak, and they'll last for 6 or 7 hours. You know what I mean? Where you're just cruising and everything is just going so smoothly. Of course, you have your other days where I end up with some jacked up load. I'm fighting that thing through the whole dang day. I'm constantly adjusting it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the whole, I think those solo times on the trail, with that with string of animals that you're super familiar with and that know you really well, and everyone trusts everyone, and we're all making good decisions. Is like, yeah, those are definitely peak premium experiences for sure. That yeah, I'll do that for as long as I possibly can.
Oh man, that just your
Yeah,
description of that just takes me back. I just want
yeah,
It's too bad it's the middle of December right now.
I know, right?
This is going to come out in January, but we're recording in the middle of December right before Christmas.
Yeah, yeah.
And my gosh, it's too long to summertime right now. But
I know it feels that way.
I was just thinking though, there's like markers on the trail, like I mean mile markers. Like it seems like if you can get past mile one, you're
Mm.
probably good on your loads. Like it seems like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
first
yeah,
mile, I got
yep,
Victoria Maya back there. I'm watching my loads. I'm,
yeah,
I'm questioning myself, making sure I got everything right. And
right.
then it seems like you're okay. And then it seems like about, I don't know, for me, with my thoughts and things, it takes about 5 miles to leave the world behind.
Mm.
Like you
Yeah,
need to ride
yeah,
that hour or two to leave that world behind. And you're like, okay,
yeah,
and then you start seeing, like you're saying, you start noticing things that you didn't in that first little while. You start
right.
noticing
Yep.
the trees. You start noticing, the mountains and the
Yeah,
water. And then like you're saying, there's those special moments like when you talked about like those mules letting some air out and going, oh man,
Yeah.
like that is a relief when your string finally settles. You're like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
letting go
Yeah.
and leaving the world behind. That's a
Yeah.
good, it's a good feeling, you know. And then at the
Yeah,
very
it
end, it seems
is.
like, you know, and I'm coming to you from recreational packing. I know you're talking a lot about
Sure.
contract packing, but it's still the same
Yeah.
experiences
Sure.
where for either one of us, at some point you're kind of ready to come back to the world and it like completes the trip.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
it completes the
Yeah.
thing. You're like, okay, all right, well now I'm ready for a cheeseburger, you know.
Yeah. 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 Right.
After like for me, after I've ate freeze dried food for
Hey,
a
that's the
week
whole
or
reason. One of the main reasons I pack is I never eat that shit. I hardly ever
two.
eat freeze-dried food.
Yeah,
I'm
I
having
get
burgers back there.
there you go. Yeah, we I usually eat something good on the first day, you know, pack in a
Yeah.
steak or something good on the first day, but
Sure.
it's freeze dried.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my dad was my dad was like you. Okay, my
Yeah.
dad he wasn't afraid to have a big old pack string. He's hauling
Yeah.
everything, man. He's hauling
Yeah.
the wall tents, the stoves. He's hauling
Yeah.
his whole my
Yep.
dad's his I think my dad's real love for recreation is cooking
Mm.
in the back country. Like he loves
Yeah.
it. That's
Yeah.
his thing.
That's
It's all
awesome.
about okay, we're gonna be
Yeah.
camping, we're packing, but this is the food we're gonna
Right.
eat. So
Yeah.
growing
That's
up, my
awesome.
dad was, I mean, we would do it all. He would freeze
Mm.
dry, or not free. He'd bring a dry ice, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and I mean, we had ice cream on pack trips, seriously,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
now
That's awesome.
I've taken on the opposite. I'm like the backpacker packer.
Yeah,
I
I
like
get
the
it.
lightweight stuff. I'm like, okay, well, how much can I put on this mule and keep it under 150 pounds, you
Yeah.
know, and not have to take two or three, you know, like when I'm
Yeah.
going solo trips or something. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's a little different look at it, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that is. That's funny. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I definitely, like last summer I did a trip without like the full string or whatever, but normally even if I'm doing something, I like to do at least a couple trips every year that are just like have no work involved. It's just for me or me
yeah,
and like my friends, and just go somewhere and hang out for a while and whatever. Excuse me, but I would say like, yeah, it's nice. It's definitely fun having a short string sometimes for sure. But so much of my life, it's like every pack trip is an opportunity, for me to work with some other up and coming stock. So, oftentimes I might bring a short string, but I'm going to throw in a couple empty that are just going to be along for the experience of the whole deal. Early in the season, I'm usually trying to leg everybody up, but later in the year, I'm more like trying to give some experience to some animal that like this one mare that I brought in. She's a 4-year-old mare that I'm trying to get started on her saddle. She was just a pasture pet and got her going a little bit in the spring, but then brought her in packing in like early August or something. And yeah, it was super interesting. And she had a colossal wreck. I haven't had a wreck like that in a long time, but this trail section, she just stepped a little wrong and the entire trail gave way. And she
oh
just
no,
shot down this hillside and ended up completely upside down on her back in like a stand of trees and couldn't really turn over. And yeah, it was the whole thing. An hour and a half later, I managed to get her out of there. Like, I mean, it was like a whole process of getting her turned over. Didn't take too long and getting the pack saddle off and everything. But yeah, and then trying to get her up this hillside was a whole nother pain in the ass. But she made it out without a scratch. But yeah, so a lot of times those trips, I'm usually trying to stick someone else in there to get some experience for someone out of those things. But yeah, you never know what's going to happen though.
oh man. Well, some of those things just come your way, you know, and you don't ask for it. Those are some
Oh
of the
yeah.
most memorable trips. I went on a pack trip to the West Elk Wilderness in
Mm,
Colorado, near Gunnison, Colorado.
nice. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
And we didn't we didn't necessarily like route the trip, you know,
Mm,
really well. We're kind of like, all right, well,
yeah.
this is kind of an idea where we want to go and let's go do it.
Right.
And yeah, it was just one thing after another. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
the very first day we were supposed to get into camp like 10 miles. and we
Yeah.
ended up riding 20 something miles. So
Oh man.
and this is us. So us driving there, packing up,
Right.
and
Right.
so I mean, this puts us. We get in there. It is dark.
Yeah.
It is dark when we get to this first camp, and we're making camp, and it's just it starts to rain. Like everything's going
Right.
wrong. So my father-in-law loves this story because he was with me. So it's dark. We're setting up our tents in dark, and um, the next morning we get up and I unzip my tent, and apparently I put my tent up in the last camp's bathroom. There's freaking there's
Perfect.
freaking toilet paper and crap everywhere. And that's where
Oh
I put my
God.
tent. I'm like,
Nice.
oh, you're kidding me. Like you can't, and I got my little headlamp, but it's like, it's raining. It's,
Yeah.
it's hard to see. And so, oh, he loves to tease me about
I'm
that,
sure.
Oh yeah, that's where you like put there's the crapper tie. Go put your tent over there, bud. And
That's
then it's,
great.
the next day, one of our friends, he has a mule that he just bought and he wants to take it to water. And so he decides that
Mm.
he's just going to hop on bareback because that's easy, and
Yeah.
so he goes to hop on it bareback and it bucks him off and it kicks him in the leg
Oh.
and it hurts him. I mean, it's legitimate. Like he's hurt. He didn't
Yeah, yeah.
break his leg, but he is hurt. He's in his
Dang.
70s. So him taking a
Dang.
pop
Oh
like
shit,
that
man.
is,
Yeah.
and so but he's like in this training mode. So he's like hobbling around limping. He's like, Ty, because he knows
Mm.
you know, I'm the trainer kid, right? Whatever.
Right, right,
Ty,
right.
get over here. Get on this mule bareback. You show it how it's done. Like,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm like, no. I'm like, no. But
Yeah.
this is not the time to
Great.
like tune on your mule, buddy. Like this is
Yeah,
like,
right.
no. He's like, well, I thought you were a trainer. I'm like, well, not today. I'm on
Yeah.
vacation, man. I don't want to. I'm not
Yeah.
going to get on your mule bareback and show it how it's done 20 something miles back in after you
Yeah,
just got
I
bucked off of
know.
it,
Oh man. Yeah.
And
No, it's a good point.
that trip just
Yeah.
kept stacking up. Um, some other friends, they caught up to us the following day,
Mm,
and he gets there and he turns all his mules loose to graze.
mm. Yeah.
And immediately, I mean, as soon as he turns them out, they're heading back.
Oh
Like they're
shit.
they're
Right away.
it's just like
Dang.
he's just like, see ya. And
Yeah.
they're like, yep, you bet, see ya. And so they take off. And so
Shit.
me and my father-in-law, we grab our mules and we're gonna go grab him because this guy he'd obviously unsaddled everything. He's like,
Yeah,
just turn
right.
everything loose. He hasn't got any
Yeah,
mules. So
yeah.
we jump on our mules and we're getting out there. And by the time we caught up, kind of that was what reminded me of your story, is by the
Yeah.
time we caught up to him, one of his mules was upside down in a creek.
Oh shit. Yep.
It had hobbles on, front hobbles,
Oh
figure eight
yeah.
style
Yep.
hobbles, and it was upside
Yep.
down. And we're like, first of all, I have no idea how it did it. I mean,
Yeah,
I,
right.
I mean, even after the situation, I sat there and looked. I'm like, how did this thing flip over? But it was
Yeah.
upside down in the creek. So right away, I always pack a rope and stuff. And
Yep.
anyways, I got a rope around its heels, and my father-in-law pulled on the lead rope. I mean, we got this thing flipped over and
Sure.
it worked it out. But I sat there and like,
Yeah.
how did you flip over in that? But the whole trip was
Yeah.
like that, like one thing after another. And then we got the next day, we're riding and we're riding and we're riding. And the guy that's kind of in charge of this route today, we're like, hey, where are we going, man? Like, how far we guys like, I don't really know. And
Yeah.
we rode all day long and we never did get to the spot we were supposed to go to. And so it's
Oh,
dark
right on.
again and we pitch, we'd rode so late that we just throw our bedrolls out on the ground and just
Yeah.
go to sleep. But
Yeah.
this whole trip like has a crap theme because the next morning we wake up again, and this time we were in the bear's bathroom. There's bear
Oh,
scat
nice.
like everywhere,
Everywhere. Dang.
everywhere. And we're
Dang.
like, well, we're lucky that that
Yeah,
mules didn't
right.
get ran off last night or something. They don't have any grizzly there in that
Yeah.
country, but they got a ton of black bear.
Yeah, right.
Ton of
Yeah.
black bear. And so, anyways, I probably need to do a podcast episode on that whole trip because it
Yeah, it
was it
sounds like
was
it. It
like
sounds epic.
it was one thing after another. And it's funny though, like you get through those trips that at the time they seem kind of miserable in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
get through it and then it's like, man, I can remember that trip way better than I can remember all the ones that,
Yeah.
like were just, just normal, just
Things
nothing.
went smooth. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. The struggle trips are you definitely those get etched in your memory for
Oh,
sure. Yeah.
and you
Yeah, it's
learn
really
those,
true.
those are the learning moments.
Yeah.
And like doing hard stuff, like the stuff that you do, when I'm talking to people and they're talking back to kind of the relationship stuff,
Mm,
you know, I tell people I'm like, don't necessarily go hunting problems, but it
yeah.
seems like you kind of have to have those struggles
Yeah.
to come through. I had
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine ask if he's big into the ice bath thing,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and he asked me, "You do that?" And I said, "No." "You take cold showers?" And I said, "I've taken lots of cold showers in the saddle, like right,
Exactly.
and I froze my butt off in the saddle many times."
Yeah.
And anyway, since then, I actually have started taking cold showers,
Oh,
and
nice.
but it's kind of funny, like just struggled things like that. Like even like
Yeah.
for me, taking a cold shower or doing real hard stuff and getting caught out in the rain in a real cold
Yeah.
shower. Like when you get
Yeah,
through
right.
that, there's just a different experience, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's really
interesting.
true. Yeah, it is interesting. I think you're right. There is something about that struggle. There's somehow that the way we're set up, it benefits us, like there's
It does.
something, as long as it's not too dangerous or whatever. I mean, I've definitely had two guests with me that have gone into hypothermia because of rain and
Oh yeah,
sleet and whatever, and it's like it's so nerve-wracking to try and get these people, make sure they're okay, which thankfully they both of them were just fine in the end. But actually three times I've had that happen. But yeah, I think you're right. I think yeah, like we were talking about, there's something about the struggle. And especially if you can keep your animals, safe, and you can at least not
yeah,
not get too severely injured. But yeah, there's something about it for sure. Yeah, and I just, if you pack enough, you're gonna have no shortage of that for sure. You're gonna have plenty of those days for sure where you're struggling hard. Yeah.
yeah. But it's good to push. So
Yeah, it
a
is.
long time ago, a good friend of mine, Sam Scaling, he's been on this show before and everything,
Nice.
but um, when we very first met, he told me about you, and he's like, "Oh,
Oh.
you and Chris Iyer and your red mules," because I have see the picture. You see the picture behind me.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
my main ride. That's Riata
Oh,
right
nice.
there.
Nice.
And
Awesome.
anyways, yeah, I got a whole herd of red mules.
Nice.
Mine are the darker, like the more sorrel, darker colored
Yeah. Yeah.
mules.
Right.
But yeah, you got a beautiful string of them
Yeah.
red
Thanks,
mules.
man.
So what's
Yeah, I do. They're good, man. I got some good ones right now for sure.
Yeah. So did the red mule thing kind of just go your way? Did you have a handful of them that were kind of good and then you want to match, or did it?
Yeah.
Uh, what's your selection process? I guess.
My selection process is a funny one. And I don't know. I just got into like these, like, I don't know, we call them red or blonde mules, like, but the
Right.
red ones are like they're more sorrel. And I definitely have a few of those in the mix. And I don't know. I something like, to me, that was like the classic pack string. That was the classic Bob Marshall pack string, was like, a full string, 9 mules, and they're all like big draft red
Yeah.
mules, or blonde mules. And those things are, in a way, the horses have gone through a lot of different phases in the backcountry here in terms of what people are riding, what breeds are riding. I mean, when I first started out, everyone was riding quarter horse geldings. That was just like what everybody rode.
Yeah.
And slowly that's really diversified, and you just have so many different things going on right now with horses. And like a lot of the outfitters, like draft crosses have just like taken over. And a lot of that, quite honestly, is because a lot of people show up for a big hunting trip, and they weigh 275 or 300, and you can't put them on a 15-hand quarter horse. They need a big
Yeah.
draft cross to carry some of these big folks into the backcountry. But that's really shifted a lot. And like, you have some other, breeds that have shown up as well. But as far as mules go, I kind of was brought up and, in that world of where like the ultimate string was like a big string of blonde or sorrel mules that were all big draft crosses that all came out of big Belgian mares and Mammoth Jacks. And I kind of have just stuck with it. And it feels like, though, like at this point, I'm like one of the last guys around that's still running that kind of a string. And I have a couple black mules as well, but that are just, I have one that's in my string pretty much all the time, and he's just such an awesome rider. It's such a great packer. He's got a few years left of packing still, but like these five I just bought, they're all like red or sorrel. And to be honest, it's like at this point it's working against me because they're more expensive than black mules. Like the off-color mules they're just less expensive. Same mules, same conformation, same experience, same everything.
Yep.
If it's black or white, or and maybe not if it's paint, because everyone wants a paint horse or a paint mule or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the right now the mule market's in a super interesting place, and I'm kind of, just what I'm tied into is like some of these guys who are big at breeding these bigger draft mules. And man, they're just in such demand right now. It is unbelievable. And a lot of the mule market is dictated by what's happening in the South and what's happening back east in Pennsylvania with the Amish. And there's just the Amish population has grown so significantly in the last, I think it's 20 years now, where these colonies of Amish, they've just expanded massively. And, they're just having more kids, and there's more people buying farms, and they need six mules to run their implements. And there's just all these kids that are 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old that are all coming up now, and they're all going out on their own with their own farms, and they're all buying mules like crazy. And like it's just driven the price up so high. I mean, a year, well, let's see, it'll be almost two years in February. I went to the two different auctions in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that were for 3-year-olds. These are untouched mules, and they went between 12 and 18,000 a head, untouched 3-year-olds. And they're giant and they're beautiful. And they
Yeah.
have never, before the auction, they never had a halter on them. You know what I mean? They're just so green, but they're big and they're beautiful. And I watched in those two auctions, I think it was 275 mules go for that price. Same ones that were black were going for 7, 8, 9,000. And but the bigger, the nice blondes and sorrels are just, and they definitely, the Amish prefer to have Molly mules over the John mules. But they just, I don't think there was a single big Molly that went for less than 12,500, $12,000, And so that market that's the upper end of it. But then you got all these weanlings, or at that there was two auctions that I only went to one, but there was two auctions in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in October, 2 days apart. And they were the average price for a weanling mule was $4,500, untouched 4 5-month-old mule. And
Yeah.
so they're just churning them out over there. And I mean, the guy who I'm friends with, an Amish guy over there, and who held the auction I went to. And, I think he's got 23 blonde Belgian mares, and they're all pregnant, and you can't find a big mammoth jack, like people won't let them go. And if they will, they're so expensive. Like I was trying to buy one of his, and the thing was pretty old, man. He wanted 60,000. It's like, so I don't know. It's to my detriment that I love these big mules at this point, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to, it used to be that I could get a 4-year-old made mule. It probably started to end about 8 years ago or so. Is probably when I got my last one that I was like, all right, like a 4 or 5-year-old mule that has a bunch of experience on the trail. You just put a pack saddle on it and go. And you can get that thing for $3,500 all day long, no problem.
Yep.
And now it's like, yeah, you can't. They're just so hard to come by. There's still deals out there, but it's like it's
Mhm.
hard to come by them. But yeah, I've just been, maybe it's just I like the big draft crosses personally. I think that in my experience, they have a calmer disposition, which is what I need. For me, picking mules has almost never been about conformation. I honestly don't really care that much about the conformation, and the only reason I say that, and some of my mule friends and I will go back and forth about it, but my experience has been I have had some of the funkiest looking conformationally, the funkiest looking mules who have done 30,000 miles and never been lame a day in their life, and one of them is still living. She retired. I retired her 5 years ago. Shit, she could still go packing. She's over 30 years old. She's like, and her conformation, she is such a mess. She's just a hot mess, and she just never broke down at all. So I sometimes have felt like, historically we've put too much emphasis on conformation. And so I usually am looking for attitude. I'm looking for personality. That's what I want. It's like I need to have a situation where this mule's interested in people, and that it wants to connect with me. In my experience with mules, that can take a lot longer at times. Certain animals take a lot longer to really do that than others. So like these mules I bought, four of them are just in your back pocket. They're just so into people right out of the gate. I know they're going to be great. They're going to be easy to work with. They're going to be easy to train. Haltering them up is no problem. But I've got this other mule out there who's coming three, and he, I swear it took him nine. I've had him for a year now, and it took him 9 months before he really started to come around. And now I'm like, okay, this guy and I, we're going to work it out. But it was 9 months of being with him all
Yeah.
the time before he's really like, hey, we're cool. Everything between us is cool. I trust you, you trust me. I can touch you anywhere. I can, do whatever I want with you. And he's like, come around. But for that, it was like, man, it was hard to come by. But now more than anything, I'm just looking for, as much as I can, I'm looking for, their personality, their attitude, how interested they are in me, and whether or not I think it's an animal that I can, connect with on some level. Obviously, it's pretty hard. It's much harder to do in an auction setting where there's 100 mules going through, and I'm there the day before, and I'm trying to like walk through these pens. And like this last
Mhm.
auction, I think they were all in these like 20 by 20 pens, and there was like 10 mules, 10 baby mules, in
Yeah.
20 by 20 pens. And you're like I'm busy writing all these hip numbers down and whatever. And their dynamic is all off, and they're stuck in there with a bunch of other animals they don't know. So it's always a bit trickier when you're at auctions, whereas like those kinds of auctions, whereas if you can be at like like if you're at the salmon sale or something where you can go in and interact with just this mule, you and the mule one on one, that's a much better scenario. Or if best is if you can go and buy it from an individual. And I used to have a really good mule supplier, and he had a really good deep connection to Missouri, and that's where probably half my string came from. And he just was a great guy. He was an awesome outfitter, great packer. And he would go and buy 15 mules every winter in Missouri and bring them back. He was usually running 70, 80 head of mules, something like that, but all his mules were for sale. You could buy any one of them. You couldn't buy one. He would never sell you a dude horse for anything because they were just too hard. The good ones were too hard to come by. But any mule he had was for sale. And but that was the best program because I could go over to his corrals and I could pick out a mule. But the thing he always did, which is what I do with when I do occasionally will sell a mule, I guarantee him. So it's like you take that mule home, you don't get along with that mule anytime in the first year of having that mule, you can bring it back. I'll give you all your money. As long as it's not hurt, I'll give you all your money back. Like no problem at all. And I did that with that guy for a number of years. And I definitely brought a couple of them back that just weren't, they just weren't a good fit for me or for my herd. But yeah, that's the best case scenario in terms of buying those mules because like you spend some time, I can get it on the trail. I can really get a feel for what it's all about. And I've certainly got a couple animals that haven't got along with people. I've gotten those back and found other homes for them. But yeah, it's a blessing and a curse having this strong desire for these big Belgian mules for sure. But they're just I think I don't think they probably live quite as long or have quite as long a working life. This is just totally anecdotally, like big dog or something, they probably don't go as hard. It seems like they end up with arthritis more than some of the smaller mules do. But boy, they're stepping over big logs that are falling down on the trail. They're great for that. Crossing deep rivers, which I do every spring. They're just awesome at that. And then, but really more than anything, it's like that real calm disposition is what I really like about these guys. And other than just how beautiful they are, like that disposition seems to really carry through from that sort of draft horse side of things. So yeah.
Well, they dang sure look cool in your videos, man. Any of my
Thank you.
listeners, you guys want to see some cool video of Pack and go check out Mule Dragger on Instagram. But you're right
Yeah.
about that. Disposition is the most important. Some of the best advice I've ever
Yeah.
got. Like just for me, I used to buy and sell and train a lot, and the best
Okay.
advice I ever
Okay.
got was gentle, gentle, gentle. Just
Yeah.
get them
Right.
gentle, and everything else will work out. But there
Yeah.
must be something with the hybrid vigor because you're right. I've had
Yeah.
some that had the weirdest conformation. You're like, you're weird, duck, and
Yeah.
and they keep going. I think it's the hybrid vigor in them.
It must be, right? I've never
You know,
understood it. Yeah.
because if it
But
was a
it's
horse
because
or if it was a donkey, it would
yeah,
break down for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just what it seems like with the horses. It just like you can like that mule I have standing out there right now. I mean, she's duck footed like you can't believe, and her ribs are sprung out, and it's like
Yeah.
she's just she's got no quit in her.
Yeah.
She's just and I don't, I honestly like I've had her all these years. She's never colicked. She's never had a hoof abscess. She's never had
No.
a single problem ever. Nothing. And you're just, yeah. And but I mean, you look at her and it's like, man, she doesn't, she's got neck looks all funky, and you know what I mean? She just doesn't
Yeah.
look right. Now she's old, really old, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, man. She just keeps going. And I've just had a number of mules like that over the years that are just, yeah, they just have such few health problems ever.
Mhm.
And yeah, their conformation just doesn't seem to be a factor. Yeah, I don't know.
So do you got a busy season of packing coming up this summer? You got
Yeah, I
contracts
do.
already lined out?
Yeah, I do. I have a few things. I have a few things going, some of which I can't quite talk about yet because I got a couple of bigger projects in the works.
Cool.
But yeah, I've got some good stuff coming up for sure. I'm looking forward to it. Usually my season starts off around May 15th. That's usually when I kick off. That's like there's I do just a strict volunteer pack trip for the Forest Service for, I have a buddy that runs there's a big ranger station back in the middle of the Bob. It's like from my trailhead, it's like almost 40 miles back there. It's like a 2-day ride, but there's a big ranger station back there with big corrals and big pasture, 100 and something acre pasture that's fenced off. And then they have like, 5 or 6, buildings, a big cook shack and a barn and all that stuff. And I have a group of trail crew that's anywhere from 7 to 20 people, depending on the year, that live back there from June usually until like the beginning of October or something. And a lot of those folks, the trail crew, they just spend the whole summer back there. They get a pack string delivery every week, once a week, that does mail and food and whatever. But their initial trip for the season, my buddy who runs that ranger station, I do an initial delivery for him with his guys, and that's all. That's usually one of my most favorite trips of the year, and I'm always like you say, just chomping at the bit, trying to get to that. I'm always super excited to get the snow melted out, and as soon as it's melted, I'm on the trail and starting to do some initial clearing just here at my trailhead. And then that usually happens in April. And then yeah, in May they'll send a trail crew in just before me. And usually they'll have like a couple of mules, 3 mules, and then there'll be 4, 5, 6 trail crew workers that go in, and they'll just open up that entire trail, just clear everything out. And then I'm like usually the first full string that's like charging in behind. And yeah, it's a great trip because there's no people back there. No one's, except for that crew, no one's really been back there since the fall. And you usually see just tons of wildlife back there. And, everything's still down low in the valleys and everything's greened up. And, the rivers are always like, there's one section where I have to cross this river 4 times and a half mile. And, or I have to take a really shitty high water trail that's just real sketch, which is like this last year I did it, but I try and avoid that thing. I'd rather take my chances crossing a deep river than a trail that's like slowly but surely giving away. But yeah, I think the last 2 years I just hit it wrong at, time wise. The runoff from the snow melt was tough, and we took that high water trail and we managed to pull it off, but it was definitely a little sketchy for sure. So yeah,
Keep you
but
on your
yeah,
toes.
I'm ready. Yeah, that thing definitely does. It's always like the night before, I'm always like working it over in my head pretty
Mhm.
hard, and it's just a giant. Like I'm like the mules when they are exhaling and sighing on the trail. That's how I feel when I get past that spot. And it's like it's day one because basically it's 2 days to get there. And then I get there and I have it usually 2 days just letting the stock rest for a big season, and then or from a from being off all winter, and then 2 days out. So it's usually, at least 6-day trip, something like that. So yeah, I'm usually quite happy when I get past that spot, and I know everything is going to be fine from there. So yeah. But yeah,
Right
it should
on,
be a
man.
good season. I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Heck
Always.
yeah. So Chris, at the end of all my episodes with my guests, I like to have you share a word of advice for somebody going through this road of life.
Mm,
It could be life advice, it could be mulemanship, horsemanship advice,
okay.
packing advice. I mean, what do you got? What do you got for my listeners?
Let's see. Okay. I think I would probably give 2 tidbits. I would say just echoing what you and I were already talking about, which is, if you want to have a good relationship with your animals, spend more time with them. Go out, and if you don't, if you're not packing, that's great. Go out and sleep in their corral. Go out, just spend more time with them. Bring them out into your yard. Go spend time with them. Go spend a couple hours a day, every day for a month and see how that relationship changes. That would be the one thing I'd say on that. But like more life advice, I would say worry less. Just stop worrying. Just worry less. Worry is pretty much worthless. And you just it's I've learned it, I feel like the hard way. And a lot of it that had to do with packing, where I was not kidding you. I was a nervous wreck going down the trail with a horse and one mule, and I was a mess going down the trail. Just internally, just worried about everything. Where am I going to camp? What if there's not enough food? What if someone's already in that spot? What if we don't make it there because I have a bad wreck before then? What if this load tips over? What if we slip in this one section? What if I run across another string? Just like
Yeah.
absolutely just worthless. Absolutely worthless. The really what that I mean, worry less or worry is worthless, I think is maybe a little better way of putting it. But I'm like, which is another way of saying like, hey man, just let go of trying to control everything. Like if there's anything that I've learned from my mulemanship, horsemanship, it's you cannot control everything. And the problem is not that you can't control everything, the problem is that you're struggling to try and control shit you can't control. And if you
Yeah.
just accept it, it's like, dude, I'm here. And the ultimate set of confidence isn't that I know everything, it isn't that I've seen everything, it's that I'm confident enough to know that whatever comes my way, I know I'm going to do the best job I can with my skill set to resolve that issue. And that's what I got. That's what I bring to the table. And I've got a lot of experience doing that. But that's the more positive framing of it, is like get to a spot where not where you understand everything or know everything, but where you can dance with all those variables when they inevitably come raining down upon you, whatever it might be, whether it's a moose running through the middle of your string, whether it's a horse colicking, dying on the trail, whatever it is, whatever struggle, whatever colossal wreck you have, you're not going to control all of it. So just let it go, and then manage whatever it is. Just do your best to manage it with all the skill set you have. And that's really all you can do. But this thing where we get caught in our heads and we're like, I call it obsessive rumination. You're like a cow just chewing its worry cud. You're just gnawing on it,
Worry
just
cut.
gnawing on it. And it's just ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And you just obsess over all this shit. And it's like, man, just just let it all go, man. Let it all go. You can't control it all anyway. So it's this huge ego inflation thing that you think that we think that somehow or another we're going to be able to manage or dial in all these variables. It's like,
Mm.
actually, this isn't even about you, man. Like, just let all that go and do the best you can. And what happens is going to happen, be prepared, do your best. That's all you can really do.
Don't chew your worry cud. that's
Exactly.
that's a
Don't chew
great.
it, man.
I've never
Spit
heard
it
that
out,
before,
dude.
Chris. That is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might
That's
have
how
to
it
steal
feels.
that.
I see these cows walking around here and they're
Yep.
just gnawing on. I'm like, that's what I feel like. That's what I used to feel like going down the trail, just
Yep.
chewing on this thing. And just again and again, it's like, man, just stop. Yeah.
That's good. Hey, those are
Yeah.
some great words of advice, and
Yeah.
I definitely would mimic that to everybody. That's just wonderful. That's wonderful. So I appreciate you coming on, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate your time. And I hope our trails cross someday. And yeah, but definitely like, yeah, get up here and come riding, come packing.
Man, I'd love to come up there with you and spend some time.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. So hopefully
Yeah.
one of these
Do it,
days we
man.
can do that.
Yeah. That'd be
Um,
great.
to to all of our listeners out there, you got to check out Chris's Instagram page. It's called Mule Dragger. Look it up, and the beautiful videos, beautiful
Yeah. Thanks,
photography.
man. Appreciate it.
So cool. Chris, where else can they find your information? Because you do packing clinics and you got all kinds
Yeah,
of
I do
things
packing
going.
clinics. I do packing clinics and I advertise for those on Instagram. So you can that's the best place to either get a hold of me or to find me is there.
Okay.
Yeah, I am a custom saddle maker, but I just want to be clear. Like I'm so grateful for all the orders. I cannot take any more orders. So I'm super appreciative of everyone wanting saddles,
Yeah.
but like
Hmm.
it's like my waiting list is already too long. So yeah, just to get that out there. Like I don't, yeah, you don't need to visit any websites or anything else. You can find me on Instagram. And I'm happy to help anyone that has questions. I answer tons of questions. I try and get to every single message. Anything I can do to help or encourage people, or a lot of people get a hold of me because their kid wants to get into packing. I'm like, man, I'm great at encouraging that, and I'll do whatever I can to point you in the right direction and the right resources to get you or some family member rolling in that world is one of my little missions. So please, feel free to hit me up.
That's great. I'm glad you're doing that for people. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Everybody, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review, let us know how you like the episode. If you're on Spotify, you can leave a review, and if you're on Apple, you can leave a 5 stars if you feel we deserve it. I think Chris does.
I
So
do too.
I appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah.
You can find me or look me up at tsmules.com. You can send me an email, ty@tsmules.com. And we'd love to hear from you. So, with that, you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you down the road.